return to BookTube required a little bit of tradition. So I put on my coat and I tromped around the rainy streets of Edinburgh. And I dragged Jean with me. You're welcome! It's Leanne. You have no idea how many ways I find to say my name before I eventually just get on with it. I'm not gonna lie, the stars are aligning for me right now. It is overcast, it's cool, it's drizzly, I can wear a jumper and not feel like a sweat bag. I have warm tea, lots of chat, and a book haul. What more can we possibly ask for? Well actually, now that you mention it, how about Book of the Month? That is correct. This is an iconic blue box that I am holding in my hands because I have a fun sponsorship to talk to you about today before we get into the cobblestoned wanderings. And it is one finally, specifically for my American friends. Almost every bookish service that I have teamed up with in the past has been UK based, and a lot of the time they don't ship internationally, and that has been a bit sad for you guys in the US. So this one is a little tribute just for you. Us readers across the pond will just have to look at you in envy because you have the wonderful curation talents of Book of the Month, which is a monthly book subscription service. Book of the Month curate from hundreds of exciting upcoming titles that have not even yet been released. And they read them all so that you don't have to. Then they pick 5 and they give you the choice out of their picks which book you would like to receive that month, which reduces the odds of getting a dud book by like a lot. And if that wasn't good enough, what's more, if you cannot find a book amongst those 5 amazing titles in that month that you like, you can skip that box. Yes, you heard me right, guys, gals and non-binary pals. This is a completely risk-free subscription. And just to add the cherry on top of the bookish cake, you can get your first iconic blue Book of the Month box subscription for just $9.99. And you can get that with my code and link down in the description. Once again, you're welcome. So let's see what I picked, shall we? Dun, 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 dun. Oh, and did I mention that you get a bookmark every month? Because as somebody who makes bookmarks, I appreciate this. This month, in a shocking twist of fate, I picked a thriller. Ain't nobody saw that one coming. This is The Collective by Alison Galen, and it is a story of revenge. And I do love a good revenge tale. This one is about Camille Gardner. She is still absolutely reeling from the death of her daughter and obsessed with the very privileged man that she believes caused it. And then one day Camille is approached by a group of other women. These women have all been in the same position as Camille. They have all suffered a death of a loved one and injustice by somebody who is still walking free in the world with no consequences. This group of women have decided that that is just not good enough and that justice has to be served, and so they band together to enact some very precise and very anonymous revenge kills of their own. But then, right at the end of the blurb, as I so love, it drops this creepy little line. Becoming more deeply enmeshed in the group, Camille learns truths about the collective and about herself that she may not survive. Yes, please. But not only were Book of the Month kind enough to send me the book that I picked for my iconic blue box, they also sent me all of the other choices for November. In November, you could also have the stunning The Keeper of Night by Kylie Lee Baker. Ren Scarborough is a reaper. She collects the souls of the dead and ferries them off to the god of the dead. It sounds like a fairly straightforward job, but Ren is half English, half Japanese, which means that there is more than one god in the picture and there is more than one set of abilities within her. There is more than one way to collect souls. And when she starts to lose control of one set of her abilities, she decides that she has to travel to Japan to try and find other reapers that are like her. The little tagline on the back says, "I am too dangerous to let live any longer." Next up I have The Family by Naomi Krupinski. I should point out that I absolutely love this cover. This one is kind of a take on a mafia story, but from a feminist point of view. It follows two daughters of two families in one particular mafia group, gang, I don't know, collective. But just when the two of them thought that they could never be further apart, one event happens that pulls them both together and tests all of those old bonds of loyalty. Next one that I've got is A Little Hope by Ethan Joella, and this one is set in what looks like a stunningly autumnal little Connecticut town, which appeals to me right off the bat. But it is one of my favourite kinds of literary fiction when I do go there novels, where it is following a group of interconnected friends over the course of a year and all of the things that happen to them in this little supposedly idyllic town. There is also the hilariously titled How to Marry Keanu Reeves in 90 Days by K.M. Jackson, which is about an artist who has decided that she's going to get her entire life together, and then she hears that Keanu Reeves is getting married in 90 days, and being as he is her perfect man, she cannot allow this to happen. And finally, one of the things that I did not know about Book of the Month is that they actually publish lots of other books separate from the ones that come in their subscription service. So memoirs and essay collections and like very, very special one-off things. So they have sent me two of the titles that they are going to be publishing this month that you can also get in your box. The first one that I've got is My Body by Emily Ratajkowski. Emily is a model, and she was the model who appeared in the Blurred Lines music video. And also very appropriate for the revival of 90s fashion that's going on right now is this memoir by Will Smith, suitably entitled Will. So thank you very much to Book of the Month for sponsoring this video and for kicking off this book haul with some extra books that we did not anticipate having. Also, overcast might work for me, but it does not work for my camera apparently. Hee cold tea. Is it vaguely gross? Yes. Am I going to continue drinking it? No, so yes. We don't waste tea in this household. So as I said at the start of the video, my wonderful friend Jean from Jean Bookish Thoughts and I decided that we were going to go book shopping. We've both of us had a lot on over the last little while, and we've both of us been particularly stressed. So we decided that we were going to treat ourselves, which always for us involves spending money. Arguably, I think it's what both of us do best. So we met up yesterday on a particularly dreich and dour Edinburgh morning. Dreich meaning wet and potentially unpleasant, and dour meaning dark and overcast. And a little bit depressing for everybody who's not us, because when we're going to buy books, nothing will stop us. First of all, we headed to Blackwell's, which is a thoroughly iconic spot in Edinburgh, and here you can see a lesser spotted Jean in her wild natural habitat being startled by photographers. In Blackwell's, we finally saw the stunning Medusa by Jessie Burton finally on the shelves. Finally, it's out in the world where we can talk about it. And of course, we visited some other sections with some favourites, like the crime section. I love Blackwell's in Edinburgh. It has a huge selection of both popular and really, really pretty editions. And unlike some other, you know, like high street chains, the stock really changes constantly, and the staff are lovely and so eager to point out things that you might have missed. And not only that, but they have a massive board game selection in the basement, which is essentially where you can find Jean and I hanging out at any time. Seriously, go to Blackwell's, go to the basement, you will probably find Jean and I licking the cellophane sleeves on the board games. And of course trying to work out how we can make an inconspicuous fort of books and board games where nobody will see us, so that we can just live there and never have to leave. Blackwell's is also weirdly the place where I am more likely to buy hardback fiction than any other bookshop that I have ever visited. I don't know why, maybe it's just that their displays are aesthetically pleasing in a way that makes me happy, but I always find at least one hardback in there to take home with me, which is a bit of a bummer because it's usually at the start of the shopping trip and it means you have to carry it around the rest of Edinburgh, but here we are. So I ended up with 3 books in Blackwell's But this also ended up being the start of Jean and I twinning for this entire book buying experience. From here on in, we either deliberately bought the same books as each other because they sounded amazing and were just right in the middle of our Venn diagram of books that we love, or Jean had already bought them on a previous trip, I had independently selected them, and now we have decided that we're just going to buddy read all of them. Because let's be honest, we need the motivation. The first of those books that I picked up was The Whistling by Rebecca Netley, and don't know if you'll be able to see the details, so I'll put up a better picture here, but at the centre of this flame there is a woman's silhouette, and it's so creepy and I'm so here for it. And I just want to read you the blurb for this one because it gave me icky shivers, and it's the reason why it now lives in my house. Alone in the world, Elspeth Swanson has taken the position of nanny to a family on the remote Scottish island of Skeltsey. Her charge, Mary, is a troubled child, the only kind of child that exists. Distracted and secretive, she hasn't uttered a word since the sudden death of her twin, William, just days after their former nanny disappeared. With Mary defiantly silent, Elspeth turns to the islanders, but no one will speak of what happened to William, just as no one can explain the hypnotic lullabies sung in empty corridors, nor the strange dolls that appear in abandoned rooms, nor the faint whistling that comes in the night. As winter draws in and passage to the mainland becomes impossible, Elspeth finds herself trapped. But is this house haunted by the ghosts of the past or the secrets of the living? It's all of my favourite ghostly tropes in one place. It's giving me kind of like Woman in Black vibes, which I also like and hate. And it's set on a tiny Scottish island, so what more could you possibly want? Next up, a book that Jean absolutely threw into my hand, like literally, here, have the book, is Ring Shout by P. Djeli Clarke. This cover is horrible, not just because of the like clan hood depiction on the front, but also because the eye holes are actually mouths with teeth. I would not have even looked at this cover myself, but Jean assures me that this was pretty amazing as a reading experience, so we're gonna try it. The premise of this book is essentially that it is 1915 and the Ku Klux Klan have very much come to power. But in this novel, the Klan are literal demons sent to Earth who need to be returned to hell, and we follow a group of hunters who are planning to do just that. So yes, here we are, I am here, we will read this, let's hope that Gina's right. In fairness, she usually is. We did discuss that we actually rarely have a dud that is recommended by the other person, so I feel quite safe, semi-safe, a little bit safe with this choice. And finally, we have this horror of all horror covers. This is nothing but Blackened Teeth by Cassandra No, and it is another very short, very gruesome little novella all about a nasty house. Well, technically a nasty little mansion, but it's all one to me really. If it has 4 walls and a door and a ghost in it, I will read about it. And again, this is another blurb that I'm going to read to you because that is what sold me on this. Kat joins her old friends who are in search of the perfect wedding venue to spend the night in a Heian era manor in Japan. Trapped in webs of love, responsibility and yesterdays, they walk into a haunted house with their hearts full of ghosts. This mansion is long abandoned, but is hungry for new guests and welcomes them all in, welcomes the demons inside them, because it is built on foundations of sacrifice and bone. Their night of food, drinks and games quickly spirals into a nightmare as the house draws them into its embrace. For lurking in the shadows is the ghost bride with a black smile and a hungry heart, and she gets lonely down there in the dirt. Okay, even creaked when it closed. That was just unnecessarily atmospheric. After Blackwell's, which is always a pretty hefty stop for us, we decided that we were in need of some sustenance, so we wandered for lunch in a gorgeous little Greek cafe. We had a big tapas plate to share, we had baklava and coffee. It was perfect friend date material. And we did some thrift shopping in Armstrongs, which is again a big staple of the Edinburgh thrifting crowd. It is a very, very individual vintage clothing store where you can find anything weird and wonderful. It's just great. Edinburgh was just really serving it with peak autumnal vibes. There were leaves changing everywhere. It was cool. We had our scarves on, but we had open coats. It was just nice. And then of course we went to visit Armchair Books. Armchair is a place that you will also find Jean and I a lot when we are in Edinburgh together. Armchair is a fairly famous used and antiquarian bookshop. During the height of the pepperoni, they were doing some amazing posts on Instagram. They just have such a good sense of humour as a store. You can tell that all of their employees have to have a sense of humour to work there, as you can see by these pretty hilarious signs that they had dotted around the place. Armchair has floor to ceiling books. It is an amazing place just to go and look at, but in the back they have some of the most gorgeous antique books. They smell great. It smells like parchment and vanilla, and oh, it's one of my favourite places. And in there, Jean was very excited to spot this book on the shelves, and again pretty much pushed it into my hands. This is The Arrival of Missives by Aliya Whiteley. It's speculative fiction published by Unsung Stories, and it is definitely one of those books with a foot in extremely weird, but you still want to keep reading, which is exactly where I found myself in the shop after reading the first couple of pages. On the back it says, "They decide long into the future what is important and expect me to be content with that." This book is about Shirley Fern. She is an emerging feminist in a world which doesn't understand what feminism is. This book is set just after the Great War, when a lot of young men of new ideas had been killed, and so basically there are a lot of women left over in their place taking jobs or wanting to take jobs that they have left behind. And amongst Shirley's fairly extreme ideas for the time, she meets Mr. Tiller, who is a war veteran who has been scarred by his experience in the war and is also kind of on the fringes of their little town. In the run up to this beautiful little town's May Day parade, their lives are kind of cast into each other's paths and they change things for each other forever. Then finally, after Armchair, we walked to Waterstones again. Edinburgh just serving Charlotte Square, which is where the book festival is every year, in all of its autumnal splendour. Just, it could not have been a nicer atmosphere to wander about in. I always kind of feel like Edinburgh wants you there. It's a city that likes to have people in it, and it provided Leanne's ideal conditions. I'm doing a little bit of lung rehab at the moment, and it made sure the air was not crisp enough that I ended up wheezing on the hills. She's getting there, girl. She's repping the chronic illness life and she's still carrying books around Edinburgh. It's powerful, powerful bitch. In Waterstones, the very first thing that I always do is go and check in with my girl Agatha. There's a beautiful section at the top of the stairs in the Princes Street Waterstones dedicated to my Queen of Crime. They always have some cracking special editions there, and of course Christmas is coming up, so some of them were starting to filter onto the shelves, and I've spotted a few that might filter onto my wish list. And then I promptly stopped vlogging because literally my arms were too full to carry on. Does it make it sound any better if I say that I had £10 off to spend? Probably not. The first thing I got was a book that I regretted leaving on a previous occasion. I have been in a Waterstones really recently when I was doing some Christmas shopping, and I kind of looked at it and I was like, oh, I like the sound of it, and as soon as I left the shop without it, I was like, that was a mistake. You best go back for that at some point. And so I did. I listened to my instincts, and I don't think that I was wrong. This is A Tomb with a View, The Stories and Glories of Graveyards by Peter Ross. And it is, I want to say, a tongue-in-cheek look at some stories of really, really famous graveyards and the way that we have made graveyards and the way that graveyards have evolved over the past few years. But I think it's less tongue-in-cheek and more just Scottish dry humour, because Peter Ross comes from and lives in Glasgow, and the tone of the book felt very like coming home to me. It felt very like having a conversation with someone that I knew in my real life about his interest in graveyards, because there is just something about Scottish banter where you have to kind of squint to realise that it's banter. And I love it. The book, which is delightfully floppy by the way, is split into these separate sections of things that we commonly find in graveyards. So there's ivy, angels, cherubs, lilies, Phoebe, cedar, unmarked, anchor, anks, Dubliners, Lilias, crescent skulls, Peter, crows, and beloved. Some of the chapters take these commonly seen things and tell one full individual story about somebody who is famously buried in a graveyard, and others take lots of different little stories and local anecdotes and stuff and weave them together. But it was just such a nice thing to dip into at the start, and I'm really, really glad that I picked it up. Next up, another one that I have been looking at quite a lot and I keep walking past because my brain says to me, Leanne, that's trash. And then the other side of my brain says to me, yeah, but it's the good kind of trash. It's the kind of trash that you can lose 4 hours on and completely enjoy the experience. It's the kind of trash that says to me, Ruth Ware. You know, like crimey candy floss for the brain. And that is The Castaways by Lucy Clarke. Now, full disclosure here, I do also have You Let Me In by Lucy Clarke. It's that red one right there on my thriller shelves. The unread red one, it's that one. I've had it for quite a while and I haven't got to it, and I don't really have an explanation as to why, and I try not to pick up multiple books from an author before I have read any of them. We've been burned by that a few times in the past, especially by thriller authors, but this one just looks so good. And I also kind of love the fact that we're coming into Christmas and we're starting to get like the Christmas thrillers and the classic Christmas crime stuff, the stuff that just makes me go no. As much as I would like to, I can't seem to read Christmas themed books. It's just too much for me. And this is coming from somebody who turns her house into Santa's grotto. I would not be surprised to find some elves wandering up in here. This is like the antithesis of that because it's a beach read, but in November. The reason that I ended up picking this up, I'm not gonna lie, is because of the first couple of lines on the back which say, you wake on a beautiful remote island, sparkling blue seas, golden sunsets, barely a footprint in the sand. Yet this is no ordinary escape. And I immediately went, it's Survivor! And in fact, I think I'm correct, because the rest of it says, next to the wreck of a plane, a stranger paces, another sharpens a knife, scoring a list of the dead onto a palm tree. Others watch from the shadows of a campfire, all with untold stories and closely guarded secrets. This is no ordinary holiday. This is no ordinary island. This is no ordinary beach read. And when I read the first couple of pages of it, I did in fact discover that they are going to Fiji, which is where the first few seasons of Australian Survivor were based. So I'm pretty sure that this is just like Survivor, but you know, in thriller form. And okay, I would be quite happy to see some people killed off instead of voted off in Survivor. I'd be okay with that. Next up, I picked up another non-fiction book. This is kind of like a family history come memoir come crimey investigation. It is called House of Glass by Hadley Friedman, and the tagline says that it is the story and secrets of a 20th century Jewish family. Essentially what happens is that Hadley's grandma passes away and she goes to her house in Paris to clean it out, expecting to find literally nothing of any interest because there never has been before. But when she starts going through some of the hoarded shoeboxes in her grand's closet, she discovers one that is entirely filled with pictures, diaries, letters and artifacts from her grandma's past. And it turns out that her grandma and her siblings were actually incredibly interesting people, because they were the fashion courtier and friend of Dior and Chagall, a trusting and brave, fierce patriot for an adopted country, and Henry, who hid in occupied France. The most that I'm going to find in my granny's house is some flour that's been there since the 50s, you know? Hadley Freeman also has a very conversational style that pulls you right in. This was another one that I could have easily just carried on with in the shop. And then finally, another book that I picked up that Jean had already picked up on a previous trip and we are now absolutely locked into buddy reading is Girl A by Abigail Dean. First of all, however, before I tell you the very little that I know about this book, I will say that I absolutely hate this cover. Like, I hate it. And if it were not for the extremely good job that the blurb writers at HarperCollins did on this one, I would not have picked this up. Can we please stop with thriller covers that have a blacked out portion of a girl's face on it, particularly a white girl with presumably light hair? Can we just not? It's a risky one, I'm not gonna lie, but the blurb is just so good. Girl A, she said, the girl who escaped. If anyone was going to make it, it was going to be you. I am Lex Gracie, but they call me Girl A. I grew up with my family on the moors. I escaped when I was 15 years old. Now something is pulling me back. And again, I don't usually pay a lot of attention to, you know, newspapers and things when they blurb books, but this one does say the novel you'll stay up reading until 3 AM, and I hope so. Although talking about blurbs, the front of this one is particularly amusing because it's just like they've gone, let's try and cover every single demographic that might maybe want to read this book, because we've got Marion Keyes, Jessie Burton, Paula Hawkins and Richard Osman. So like contemporary fiction, creepy books and myth retellings, thrillers, the girl on a train thriller author, and cozy crime, cozy geriatric murder club crime. I don't know what they were going for with this, but whatever, the formula worked for me. So that's it, guys. Those were all of the books that I got when I was out with Jean, that Jean forced me to buy. That's the narrative that I went with when I got home and had to explain them anyway, so I'm going to stick with it because it worked for me then. There's no reason to believe it won't work for me now. I had so much fun. It was just such a nice way to settle my brain, and I thought it was a nice sort of first video after my Where Have I Been video. So as always, if you have read any of the books that I have talked about today, please tell me about them down below. Or if you are interested in picking up any of the books that I have picked up, any of the many books that I have picked up today, tell me about that too. Make me feel less alone knowing that you are also going to spend all of your worldly cash on them. Thank you again to Book of the Month for sponsoring this video, and again, if you would like to get your first Book of the Month subscription and you live in the US of A, you can click the link down below in my description and put in the code down there to get your first box for extremely cheap. I love all of you guys, and I will speak to you very soon. Bye! This is usually the portion where I would moan about having to find space for all of these on my shelves, but as you can see, I just haven't been bothering, and I'm just floor, and they can just stay here. They can stay on the desk. It's fine. It's fine. I'll move. They can stay here.